Hello student and welcome back to my channel. In this video we will discuss about the point confirmed by the Mathew Arnold as the poetry as the criticism of life. So he says poetry is at the bottom criticism of life. So poetry is one of the most prestigious form of writing. In its literary work in verse of writing high quality which shows deep feeling with beauty and elegance, and it's an art that lies in the soul and spirit of a man. To enhance the beauty and broadening its scope, the critics are just as important poetry as poets are. One of those are Mathew Arnold. In first modern critic, Mathew Arnold is a distinguished 20th century English poet and critic who brought about revolution in the world of English literature with his critical essays, prose, and poetry. He deemed as a third great Victorian poet after Alfred Tennyson and Browning. Arnold, one of the most famous pieces of literary criticism is his essay of poetry, which opens his essay in criticism second series. It is Arnold's attempt to establish criteria what poetry ought to be. So, poetry, according to Mathew Arnold, is simply most delightful and perfect form of utterance that human words can reach. It is a criticism of life under a condition fixed for such a criticism by the laws of poetic truth and poetic beauty. And as the criticism of life, Arnold defines in poetry, in other words, it must concern itself with life and its problem. The idea, the subject matter, and the theme of poetry should be relevant to the lives of the people. It should not be far fetched in a way that has no directed connection to our lives. The phrase criticism of life is further elaborated by Arnold with the phrase noble and profound application of ideas to life under condition mixed by the laws of poetic truth and poetic beauty. The noble and profound application of ideas of life is what Arnold means by the criticism of life. The greatness of a poet lies in his powerful and beautiful application of ideas to life. The more powerful the application of ideas, the greater will the result in poetry is. However, application must be under condition fixed by laws of poetic truth and poetic beauty. Homer, Dante, John Milton are the poets whose application of ideas is noble and profound in poetry, while metaphysical poetry of poets like John Donne is not. Matthew Arnold owns poetry fulfills the condition of criticism of life to a large extent. His film Dover Witch appearing as a fitting example of it. The poem presents two major themes. First, it expresses the poet hopelessness and despair in the face of both of its spiritual crisis and then of his society. It then proposes true love as a relief to support his loss of faith. And in the same way, another poem, such as Marguerite and Resignation and the Southern Night, Scholar Gypsy, Arnold is passing judgment on the life of his age, life of his country, and the lives of individual men. They all represent criticism life because they address issues that are essential to human being. He say on poetic beauty and truth, poetry is a criticism of life under condition fixed by the laws of poetic truth and poetic beauty. The poetic truth and all means representation of life in a true way by the poetic beauty it means manner of style of poetry. The matter of the best poetry is characterized by truth and seriousness to an eminent degree and manner, and is characterized by superiority of diction and movement. So the matter and style must have high accent of high beauty, worth, and power. But Arnold does not define what this marks or accent is. He say he would ourselves feel it, for it is the mark of all accent of all high poetry. And all assert this characteristic of truth and seriousness which makes poetry superior and inseparable from the superiority of diction and movement, marking its style and manner. And if the matter of the poet has truth and high seriousness, the matter and diction also acquire the accent of superiority. So on high seriousness, the laws of poetic truth and poetic beauty insist on the condition of high seriousness. This is the quality that gives poetry its power. It comes from absolute sincerity that the poet feels for his subject. A poet's sincerity consists in his speaking from his very inmost soul, from his very depth. The quality of high seriousness is found in the poetry of Dante, Homer, and Milton. It is the power of sincerity that gives their criticism of life the power that they have. He says poetry superiority over other form of language. He says that the poetry has high density. He claims that poetry is superior to philosophy, science, and religion, and philosophy relies on reason, which is false now of knowledge. Science is sold as artificial and is incomplete without poetry. Religion attaches emotion to supposed fact and the supposed fact of feeling, but poetry attaches emotions to ideas and ideas infallible. It provides a sound of life and ideas without attempting to falsify the fact. Arnold is of view that poetry can be sustenance. The best poetry has the power to forming, sustaining, and delighting us as nothing else can. With the passing of time, mankind will discover that they have turned to poetry in order to interpret life and to console and sustain themselves, as science, religion, and philosophy will eventually prove to be fragile and unstable. So, in conclusion, we say to sum up, that poetry is a criticism of life, and it is the critic's duty to examine both poetry and life at the same time. Analyzed thoroughly, there is much that is useful which can be found in Arnold's conception of poetry. Truth, high seriousness, power of a powerful application of ideas to life, absolute sincerity, excellence of diction, and movement in the matter of style. These are essential requirements of great poetry, as we understood, and all had a broad conception of criticism and poetry. So, this is the detail from what he says as the poetry in the criticism of life. So, I hope you like this video and please like, share, and subscribe to my channel. Thank you.